Jenni Carlson.
I'm Barry Tramel. Welcome to the Jenni and Berry Show. Bedlam baseball arrives this week, and we're left to again ponder the future of a great rivalry. With OU headed to the Southeastern Conference in 3 short months, we know this: Bedlam baseball will never be the same. These 3 games in Stillwater will be the last conference series matching OSU and OU after 67 baseball seasons together in the Big 8 or Big 12. What do we make of Bedlam baseball going forward? Does it offer any ideas for the Bedlam preservation of other sports?
We'll talk about the viability of Bedlam moving forward, but first, we want you to subscribe to our show. Just hit that subscribe button. It might not seem like a big deal, but it will help us, and that helps you. So subscribe today. We also want to say thanks to these sponsors for supporting the Jenni and Berry Show. MidFirst Bank, Next Gen Roofing, the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum, 988, Oklahoma's Mental Health Lifeline, Two Fellas Movers, the Oklahoma Ford Dealers Association. Drive into your best in Oklahoma Ford dealers today for the best deals on Ford's full lineup of trucks and SUVs. Ford is the best in Oklahoma. Well, Barry, you said it. Bedlam baseball, again, another long-standing rivalry between OU and OSU about to come to an end. Bedlam baseball still packs a punch, O'Brate Stadium. Figure it's going to be packed this weekend with a Tuesday night game a couple weeks ago in Norman drew one of the bigger crowds at Mitchell Park. So I think fans still will turn out. It seems like we could see as big a crowd as we'll see all season for these Bedlam games.
Yeah, when you look at college baseball, OSU is more of the Southeast. They're more of the SEC type program with big crowds and tremendous facility and those kinds of things. The Sooners, will be near the back of the line when they get to the SEC, but they still turn out in Stillwater for college baseball at a high clip. And it's going to be a shame to lose this series as a conference format. I think we're still going to get to see a lot of Bedlam baseball. There's been no sign that these coaches, Skip Johnson in Norman, Josh Holliday in Stillwater, want to do away with the series like some of their other colleagues. But it's just going to be different, I think, than the Friday, Saturday, Sunday formula of constant Bedlam battles on a spring weekend. So I don't know where it's going to go, but it's going to be different. And I can tell you, Jacko, Bedlam baseball has been fun over the years.
Yeah, and it's moved around. It's been in Oklahoma City at the ballpark down in Bricktown. It's been in Tulsa. They've done a variety of things, and yet, regardless of where the game has been, whether on campus or off, fans have come for this series. There's been a lot of, sports hate between these fan bases, between these programs. I know that people will remember seeing Pistol Pete with the broom on top of the dugout at one point in this series not so long ago. So, not a series that people are, all lovey-dovey, good feeling as they gather together. This is a pretty heated rival. It's not the most heated, let's be honest. I think that goes back to football, but it's a pretty, for the fans that really care about baseball. And like you said, Barry, the OSU fans, they're definitely more numerous in the passionate ones. They care about this series. OU fans who are passionate, maybe smaller, but still care. There can be some vitriol in this series. They can get after it pretty good.
Hey, I was there in 1987 in Stillwater at old Allie P. Reynolds. It wasn't the fans who got into it. It was the ball clubs. And we saw a 37-minute delay while one brawl after another broke out after a collision at home plate. It was wild. It was crazy. It made national news. It was just a crazy day, a Sunday afternoon in Stillwater. So it can get down into the dugouts as well.
I have to ask you, those were the days of no cell phone video and TV video was scarce. How'd you keep track of who was fighting who and where things were going in that brawl?
Well, the umpires, I didn't very well because they just break around. The umpires just sort of had to eyeball it. There was no going to the video to check it out like the soft guys in stripes these days. But a bunch of guys got tossed. I remember a couple. That was near the end of the season, so a couple of weeks later, I went to the OU regional in Tucson, and Hawaii was there, and I rode on a media shuttle with this with this guy from Hawaii covering the Rainbows. And I said, you know much about Oklahoma baseball? And he said, I know they can fight. So it reached halfway across the Pacific. So it was a big deal. Heated rivalry then, heated rivalry now. But I do think that Bedlam baseball is in a pretty good spot in terms of the coaches getting along. They sort of have a sane picture of this rivalry. We see so much grandstanding by administrators, by coaches over the potential end of this series. There's reasons, I get it on some levels, but there's a lot of reasons being thrown out that make no sense in some sports. So I think we're going to play some more after this year. So salute to Josh, salute to Skip, but I don't know if it'll be the same.
Yeah, and you mentioned that the brawl and the glory days of this series were probably 1990s, maybe early 2000s. I mentioned Oklahoma City and Tulsa earlier. They got in on the action and just huge crowds packed those stadiums. I mean, when you talk about the future of Bedlam, I don't know if we'll see that type of a crowd, but if these two universities are not getting together very much, do the big crowds come for baseball? Is this a chance to really whet the appetite of the OU OSU fan bases for this rivalry if baseball can survive and maybe go back to those really giant ballparks in Oklahoma City and Tulsa?
Yeah, I don't know if they want to do that. Maybe they do. I know this. If I was Chad Weiberg and Josh Holliday and I had built a magnificent $40 million stadium like O'Brate, I don't know that I'd be taking any games away from there to send them to Oklahoma City or Tulsa. I think I'd strive for as many games on campus. And in Norman, as you mentioned it earlier, Jacko, the big crowd a couple of weeks ago on a Tuesday night, 4,500, 4,200, whatever it was, that's one of the biggest crowds in Mitchell Park history to watch the Sooners and the Cowboys on a Tuesday night. Maybe they could do an April series every Tuesday night. Maybe play
alternate back and forth,
or if you want to get everybody involved, play one Norman, one Stillwater, one Tulsa, one Oklahoma City. I don't know, just move it around. But I like the idea of this thing going along, and the Tuesday night, we'll have to see how that would work with coaches worried about the RPI, if they still use RPI in college baseball. But how will the committee? It would certainly toughen up both schedules. Sooners don't really need a tougher schedule going to the SEC, and we'll see. The Big 12 baseball still should be pretty strong. They're adding Arizona and Arizona State to a league that's got TCU, Baylor, and Tech. I mean, with Oklahoma State, that's a strong baseball conference also. So I don't know if strength of schedule is anything they want to enhance. Maybe they'll settle for two. I don't know. But a Tuesday night series seems pretty cool. You get into March, it's cold. By April, it's, you can get some rain, but man, you get some beautiful weather. I can't think of a better way to spend a Tuesday night in the spring than at the ballpark at Bedlam.
Yeah, and it would have some grounding too. If you knew that every Tuesday in the month of April you could expect a Bedlam baseball game, I think that the marketing could really take off. And I think you mentioned it before, Barry, the idea that OU is going to step into the SEC well behind the curve in success and money spent and facilities, all of the above. They're going to be behind, whether it's Mississippi State, Arkansas, LSU, so many of these programs that have these huge fan bases. So Oklahoma is going to have to step up baseball, and having something like these Bedlam games that are regular. I know that they're going to probably struggle early in the SEC. I mean, I would assume so. It's going to be a huge step up to have those types of opponents on your schedule every single weekend. But it would be a chance to really increase, get even more people to come out to Alley P in Norman. Just increase that that fan base, which is going to have to grow a lot, which I assume OU wants. They want that type of attention and buzz around their program. So to continue to try to build that, I think would be really important. But it really does seem like we're going to have Bedlam in some form. I think what you said earlier is right, Barry. The cooler heads of Josh Holliday, Skip Johnson, they don't seem to be at odds about this. There's sort of a mutual agreement, that I don't know that we've heard, exactly how they see this happening from either, but I think there's a yes on both sides. So is that Tuesday, is that the best option? And those Tuesdays in April, would a weekend non-conference series earlier in the year be a possibility? It seems like midweek games are going to have to be the likelihood moving forward, but could there be a weekend series between these two teams?
I think it would be very difficult. In the SEC, they have an even number of teams. I'd have to think about the Big 12. Haven't counted it up. But everybody plays baseball, so you don't have an off week from when you start in March. The SEC's already played, I think it's 2 series already. Here we are at late March. So they start in mid-March. You'd have to do it early March. That's not ideal, I don't think. So I think the Tuesday night question is the best way to go. So, but anything can happen. Who knows? I think anything's on the table. But the Tuesday night thing, it's helped with travel. OSU and OU historically have played Wichita State on Tuesdays, either going up there or coming down here, Dallas Baptist, Texas Arlington, whoever. In the old days, TCU before joined the Big 12. So that sure makes for easy travel. They can each get on the bus at 1 o'clock and be in the other place ballpark by 3 and play by 6 and home before midnight generally. So I think it makes a lot of sense if they can sort of swallow the beefed up schedule.
Yeah. Which you got to have coaches that want to do this. I mean, obviously administrators help, but coaches seem to be driving the bus on a lot of these discussions when it comes to Bedlam continuing. For a series that has had some pretty heated moments, the two coaches that oversee the programs right now seem to be fairly congenial. I mean, we've got obviously an OSU alum and Josh Holliday leading the Cowboy program. He could dig in if he wanted to. It doesn't seem like he does. Is this just a stroke of luck that you have two guys that are leading the programs that are willing to do this? Or I guess I don't necessarily think of baseball coaches, being hot under the collar all the time. They may get kicked out of games from time to time. Is it just a matter of you've got coaches that are more low key, or is this just a personality of these two guys right now?
I think it's personality driven. I do think you got two guys that, really they don't get on a soapbox and inflate their own importance either as a program or sport. So I think that's good. I also think baseball as a whole is not as it doesn't have as lofty of an opinion of itself. I don't know that they believe they're fighting Armageddon the way basketball and football coaches do. When you look at some of the other coaches in this series, in softball, Patty seems to not want to play Bedlam, even though we clearly, it'd be one of the great rivalries going, and is. And you look at women's basketball, J.C. Hoyt, was sort of cool to play, keeping the series going, while Jenni Branchick said, "Hey, I want to play." So, it goes both ways. It's in both campuses. And then in football, nobody wants to play anybody. They all want to schedule Langston 11 times and go to the Rose Bowl. So, you can see why nobody's wanting to play in football. But I think baseball could show the way for showing, hey, this is, we're not in the same conference anymore and can't do anything about it. So let's make the best of it and do something special. I would like to see every sport embrace that. Football, it's not going to happen for a while. We've beat that horse to death. But everybody else, it's pretty easy to schedule. It's pretty easy to find solutions. I've long wanted a Ryder Cup type matches for golf. You could play, you could do it in the fall if you had to, but spring would be even better with OU and OSU playing, at Oak Tree one day and then Karsten Creek and Jimmy Austin the next 2 days. I think it'd be fantastic. All kinds of people would be interested in that. So I would like to see some good wisdom come aboard and say, hey, let's think of ways to promote our sport and promote our programs through this Bedlam change.
Yeah, and I think not having Bedlam football, not having Bedlam basketball, if basketball doesn't survive, we're going to talk about the viability rankings, if you will, of Bedlam moving forward here in a second. But I think not having all Bedlam all the time, I think, it gives some sports that maybe aren't as high profile a chance to be the center of Bedlam. Baseball maybe it's not as popular as football or softball in this state, may fall behind basketball in some regards, but it has a chance to, if it's the only sport next year that has Bedlam, to stand out and be, sort of a place where OU and OSU fans can get together and hate on each other for a while. So if golf were to adopt some sort of Ryder Cup-esque scheduling, that could be another opportunity for fans to get together and have the Bedlam hate for a while. Tennis or soccer or, there's all these other sports. But I think it's going to be interesting, Barry, that, as these two schools go into separate conferences, and not just separate conferences, but separate conferences that are extremely far flung from what they've been used to. Travel for all teams at OU and OSU is about to change pretty darn dramatically.
Yep.
It's not going to be like you are taking a short flight to Ames, Iowa, or you're taking a short flight to Lubbock, Texas. Suddenly you've got flights to Salt Lake City. You've got flights to Tempe, to Phoenix, Arizona. You've got flights to, Gainesville, Florida as conference travel. So to me, it may not be as much of a hindrance early. There's excitement about it. But eventually, I think teams are going to get a little bit worn out from all the travel. And the idea of non-conference games that are far-flung is going to be the last thing that these teams want to do. It's one thing if you're a football team or a basketball team hopping on a charter flight. It's another thing if you're a soccer team flying Southwest and you've got to change planes 2 times before you get where you're going. That gets really tiring. If you can eliminate one of those trips and play somebody that's an hour and a half away, I think you're going to do it. So I think there could be some opportunities moving forward that, maybe right now schools or teams and coaches are not interested in, but give it a year or so and they may start being a lot more interested in a non-conference game that is right down the road.
No, I like that. I think you're exactly right. And some of these won't be flights. I mean,
yeah.
Soccer team may be on a bus to College Station. Cowboys, maybe busing to Lubbock or Ames or wherever. It may not be a short flight. So, going 85 miles down Interstate 35 seems pretty good. So I like your thinking. I think that's right. I do think in a way that it could pack together your non-conference schedule and say, let's regionalize the non-conference. That's what West Virginia has done in its sports. They joined the Big 12. Everybody else in the Central Time Zone, West Virginia is out there on the Allegheny Mountains, and the Mountaineers have made in most sports have made it a special emphasis on regional non-conference scheduling. So maybe the same will happen. That could help enhance Bedlam.
Yeah. Hey, before we get out of here, let's talk about Bedlam viability for all these other sports. Okay. Most likely, least likely. I think we can say least likely. It's got to be football. But are there any other sports that you would put with football right now for, F rating on the viability of Bedlam moving forward for those sports?
I do have one, and it saddens my heart, but I think it's softball. I don't think Patty wants to play, and you can sort of see it. I mean, the SEC's got a bunch of good programs, and most weeks in the SEC, week after week after week, she's going to be loaded up with a really difficult series. I don't think she wants to. I know she doesn't want to play a series against the Cowgirls at any point. Will she go 2 games on Tuesday nights sometime in April, like baseball we talked about, or early May? I just don't detect that that's interested. I think OSU wants to play. I think Kenny G wants to play in the softball, but I don't detect any really interest on Patty Gasso's part.
I wonder if some sort of single game at Hall of Fame Stadium is going to have to be the first entry back into Bedlam softball. Because I think you're right. I think at least initially, softball, Patty Gasso may fall in the, trying to get your bearings under you in the SEC. And not to say that they're not going to have success. I think they're going to be successful in the SEC because they've been successful all along. But just seeing what that's like, experiencing that for a year, I definitely think softball is likely a no-go for next year. Maybe it gets brought back if you get a Hall of Fame Stadium involved, a giant crowd, a big payday. Now, I know OU's obviously got their new stadium, talking about OSU's baseball. It's sort of similar now with OU softball. They don't want to move games out of there. But if the chance to, share some significant gate at Hall of Fame Stadium exists, maybe that changes what Patty Gasso and the Sooner softballers would think about doing as it relates to Bedlam. But you're right. Right now, that is a pretty low likelihood to maybe zero. It's one of those things I don't think is, to me, football is off the table for years and years and years. Softball, I think, is off the table for the immediate future, but I don't know if it's a forever thing. It feels like football is more long-term in the viability of moving forward. But I think those two are probably on the least likely into things. Wrestling is going to continue because OU is going to stay in the Big 12 with SEC not having other wrestling schools that they can join in with. So you're going to see that Bedlam continue, the original Bedlam, the originator of Bedlam, that will continue. But do you feel like, Barry, does baseball rank in the most likely to continue? Or what other sports are you feeling like Bedlam will continue in?
Well, I think baseball probably, after wrestling, baseball probably ranks next. I actually am pretty optimistic about men's basketball because both these places struggle for non-conference relevance in the marketplace. We don't have a lot of good games coming to either campus.
They need fans.
Need to get fans going. Now, I don't know if flip a coin to see who gets to play in Norman or Stillwater first. Personally, you could talk me into a home and home. Play December 2nd, play December 16th. I think that'd be a fun thing to do. Doubt they'll go for it, but I like the chances there. I think Porter's opening to it. Who knows? The new regime at Oklahoma State, but I think it's going to be I think that's going to be workable and doable. I don't detect anybody, digging in and saying I don't want to play. So I'm reasonably optimistic about men's basketball. Not terribly optimistic about women's basketball. Now I did. J.C. Hoyt, when she said, she was sort of not optimistic about it. But that was in the moments after losing to the Sooners in Stillwater. So I think perhaps on a clearer day, when the sting of defeat is not so acute, perhaps she'll see the benefit of going and playing the Sooners. I think it'd be good for both programs. Both are trying to elevate their fan bases. Both have been much bigger in the past than they are now. So a Bedlam series would enhance that. So I think that's something that can get worked out. So women's basketball probably floats there in the middle between pessimism and optimism.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And, I think as it relates to some of the sports that maybe aren't as mainstream even as the ones we've talked about, whether that be soccer or, golf, some of those types of sports, I think I would put them in the, fairly likely category because of the travel, because of the cost. I mean, some of those things that you're gonna have these teams that are gonna have to deal with, increasing mileage on conference games. So I don't see that, tennis, for example, I don't necessarily hear anything outright that makes me think that the coaches of any of those types of programs are, at loggerheads against each other. You've got track and field, cross country. There's a chance that those teams, meet because they have larger events where you've got multiple teams at one spot and it just happens that they're there. I could see that happening. But I do think as it relates to some of those sports that, you just don't have as big a budget. You are having to take that Southwest flight with multiple connections to get where you're going. The idea of getting on a bus, not having to mess with that, It feels like to me those are the types of sports that could really be interested in more Bedlam, more in-state. It's the reason you see them play Tulsa or ORU if that's an offering. If those are options for a team or a coach, why wouldn't Bedlam be in a situation like that?
Well, let me give you an example of a sport that would enhance both programs in every possible way. Women's tennis. Sooners played for a national title a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Cowgirls currently are ranked number 1 in America. Yeah. So these are big-time programs. They both have wonderful relatively new facilities. I mean, a Bedlam tennis match marketed the right way really invigorates the program from a marketing standpoint. So I think they'd be fools not to play and market that. So I like something like women's tennis continuing. So soccer, same way. I mean, they're not on that level nationally, but we got a few sports that we don't have common competitors in. They, cowgirls,
equestrian.
No equestrian at Norman. No gymnastics in Stillwater, that kind of thing. So
volleyball.
It's moot in some cases.
Yeah.
But here's the deal. Everybody's into marketing. Literally, everybody's into marketing. You're marketing to your fans, marketing for your athletes because of NIL. Bedlam is ready-made marketing. I don't think people appreciate the extent that the word Bedlam has carried across the nation. Football has been the prime mover of that because the Cowboys have gotten so much more competitive in the series the last 20 years. But national pundits, writers, podcasters, broadcasters, people throw out the word Bedlam and they don't. It's not a term of derision. It's a term of respect. It's like, this is a really cool thing they got going in Oklahoma, and they love the word. And to sort of move into that, lean into that, I think is a great marketing ploy on all fronts.
Yep. I don't think Bedlam's completely dead yet, but we may see some quiet years coming up. I sure hope that doesn't last forever. Too many good opportunities, too many good series to let that go by the wayside. Well, that's all the time we've got this week. We have got all sorts of content at selloutcrowd.com. You can find our columns, videos, and podcasts there, as well as at barrytramel.com and jenni-carlson.com. If you'd like our content sent straight to your inbox, sign up for our newsletters. It's free and easy. Just head to selloutcrowd.com and opt in. If this happens to be your first time hearing or watching us, be sure to subscribe to our show on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. And if you like what you hear, please leave us a review. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.